Hey, it has been a minute since we have done one of these quick little impromptu videos about what I've been doing, so let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. So, I haven't done any work on the idle mining game in probably about 2 months, mostly because I got very busy with a game jam. I had, a video coming on that very soon. I had a couple other things that I was working on, and honestly, I did a lot of work on the Game Jam game in a very similar vein to the Idle Miner, and it's cool. I like it. I think it has a lot of potential, but I kind of want to move on to something different, which is why I have been trying to recreate one of my favorite combat systems out of any turn-based game, which is For the King. And if you're not familiar with that game, you're about to become very familiar with it, because I have done a pretty good job of recreating it in Gdevelop. Now, this is what the code looks like so far, and I'd say this is probably about, I don't know, 5-ish hours worth of work. This is also getting me very familiar with using RNG to populate events and to make attack systems using RNG and a whole bunch of other really cool stuff. So I'm really, really happy with what I've got going on. But before any of this makes sense, let's go ahead and take a look at what it looks like in practice. Now, it is very ugly. It's not winning any beauty awards, this game so far. But over here we've got our player, and over here we've got a goblin. Now we've got a strength-based attack, a dexterity-based attack, an intelligence-based attack, and a faith-based attack. And we'll kind of get into a lot of these stuff later, but in my head, this player character is a bit more of a knight. He's definitely strength-based, and he's just kind of got, some very middling stats over here. But if we press this, you'll notice that as we hover over each of these, we get these 3 little icons that pop up here. And right now they're just, white boxes. They don't really do anything. But when we press attack, ooh, suddenly something happened. We saw that they turned green, red, and green. And what that means is that I had 2 successes, so 2 successful rolls, and 1 failing roll. And we'll do it again, and we'll see that we got the same thing there, and we've got all 3 successes. And, some keen-eyed viewers will probably see that for each success that I've had, we've done 5 points of damage for a maximum of 15 points of damage to this little goblin character. And this is just the state up here. So right now we're in choice, and then we go into attack, and then the enemy attacks, and then there's no fail state, so we can literally just do this until the end of the world. There's no failure state right now. But if we come out of there, all right, we've got another goblin, and we've got a beast. So what that means is that the game is accurately picking from a pool of enemies and giving me a different encounter every time I launch this scene, which is really, really cool, because that means our RNG is working. So let's take a look at our code for a second. So we've got our general setup stuff. This is nothing too exciting, just displaying our health, zooming the camera in. But at the beginning of the scene, the first thing that happens is that the game picks an enemy for us. And right now we've only got 2. We've only got a goblin and a beast. And, there's no difference between them other than just visual indication that one is a goblin and one is a beast. So don't bother with any of that. But at the beginning of the scene, we create our object player at a spawn position, which if we reveal our hidden stuff, we've got the player spawn, we've got an enemy spawn, and we've got a camera center, which is the only operation for that is just literally to zoom in on so that it all looks the same. And then down here, we've got our role icons. And it's important to know that those are stations, and we don't actually create the icons at the beginning of the scene. We just create a station to center them on, which we'll get into a little bit later. So we're creating our player on the player spawn, and we are making a random value for an RNG, and we make it count the variable child count of the chosen items for enemies. So what that means is that we're taking all of our enemies, which is a scene variable that we have, which is a text scene variable. So we have our enemies, and we have got goblin, and we've got beast, and that's a 0 and a 1 respectively, which is why we subtract by 1 at the end of this so that it just counts correctly. It does the math for us. And then whatever that equals, so it's either the 0 or the 1, so the goblin or the beast, we set the variable of chosen item to the string goblin or beast, so not the 0 or the 1, the goblin or the beast, and we have that selected to create the enemy of that name at that position. So it's basically a very roundabout way, which is actually the quickest way of making sure that at the beginning of the scene, this gives us one or the other. That's all that does. It took me a little bit to figure out, but luckily there are some very, very good tutorials on YouTube that helped me wrap my brain around that. We also, at the beginning of the scene, check if our dexterity stat is higher or lower or equal to the enemy's. Right now, ours is always higher, I'm pretty sure. But if I were to change the beast to have a higher dexterity than us, then the game will recognize that, and then it will set the appropriate turn order. So it's like if they're a really fast beast, they might get an attack before us, or maybe we get like a boost to dexterity if we hit the enemy in the overworld and we get like a player advantage type thing. None of that's in the game yet, but it's something that I'm looking forward to implementing at some point. So when it is our choice, we have the choice between all of these different attacks. Now, eventually there are going to be different versions of these buttons. So like I want to have like, let's say our basic attack is a basic strength based, you get 3 icons to roll. Pretty cool, pretty straightforward. But let's say we want to have an even stronger attack where it's like 5, but you have to hit all 5 of them in order to do, bigger damage. There's less of a chance. We can figure some of that stuff out later. But right now, I just wanted it to trigger off of each of the individual attack stats, of which right now there are 4 of them. Because I just think that's a very well-rounded number for all of the different classes and whatnot that are typical in your like fantasy RPG, roguelike type games. So when we press these buttons, we enter into the, actually, we should probably talk about the hovering first. So you'll remember when we do this, we hover and we get, I didn't hide the stations again, but we get all of the different pips that show up there as we hover over these things. And what happens is, let me hide that really quick. What happens is when the cursor is not hovering over the buttons, we're deleting all of the roll icons. But when they are hovered, we are creating all of the icons all at once. And that's making it to where when we press the button right here, we are changing the variable to we're rolling strength, we're rolling dex, we're rolling intelligence, or we're rolling faith. And these are all different states that happen when you press the buttons. And that moves us into the player move territory where we're doing strength checks, dexterity checks, intelligence checks, and faith checks. Now, all of these events are the exact same for each of them, with the exception of the variables of like, hey, we're rolling stats for strength, we're rolling stats for dexterity, we're rolling stats for intelligence. Because on our player character, if we can pull them up, we have our rolling stats. And you'll notice that our constitution is 75, our dexterity is 50, our faith is 50, intelligence 50, luck is 50, and strength is 75. Now, the cool thing about that is when let's say we're rolling for strength, if the variable is less than or equal to this, it is a success. And if it is greater than the variable, it is a failure, because you want the bigger portion to be the succeeding. So basically all this does is when we're rolling random in range, 1 out of 100, so on a 100% chance, like if it was 100%, you would have a 100% chance of succeeding. So if it's 75, like it is for our strength, we actually want it to be within the less than 75, so that it is actually a 75% chance to hit, as opposed to the 25% chance, which is the greater than. So if that is successful, we are going to change the variable of success to true, And if it is false, we set it to false. And we're changing the animation, which is what we're getting. Let's go to the roll icons out of these variables. So success, it turns green. And I put an S for strength, a D for dexterity, an I for intelligence, and an F for faith, just so that I could keep track of these a little bit better, just to make sure that everything is rolling correctly. It'll probably look a little bit different a little bit later on. Well, I mean, you would hope so. I don't think that anybody would want to play a game where, it looks that bad. But we're doing that for each instance of the roll icon. And that's really cool because when we're hovering over these buttons, we're creating all of the icons. So let's say we want to have one with 5 pips or 6 or 8 or 100 even. We're creating that many of them immediately. So we don't have to worry about just like, oh, well, I've assigned this to that. Like I can just assign each button its own create roll icon button. And there was probably a better way to do this. I've already probably think of one. So I think that if I can turn all of the create object events into create from external layout, and I just go ahead and I have like, hey, this is a 5 pip setup, or this is a 3 pip setup. I can just turn all of these into one, and then I can just have these as like a little external layouts later on. And I can probably even turn some of these into external events, where it's like, hey, like we don't have to reference this or rewrite this all the time, but we'll just figure out what's easier. Like I said, this is only about like 5 hours worth of work. So there's definitely some things that can be improved, but it works. And that's all I really care about. Now, when all of this is done and you've made your attack, the enemy gets a choice. And this one's very simple. They can either attack or they can defend, and defend does jack shit right now because I think all of their dexterities is 0 anyway. This was an earlier addition to the thing, so I'm probably just going to set it to attack. But what it does, we're going to change the variable of move selective enemies to a random in range of 1 and 2. And if it's a 1, they attack me using their strength score. And if it's a 2, they defend, which, like I said, does nothing as of right now. But eventually, I want the game to recognize, hey, we're going to use the dexterity stat or the strength stat of these, and hopefully I can figure out how to get that done, because right now, how I've got the damage working for the player, and I think this is probably going to work the same for the enemies, is that I have the rolling stats, which is what we talked about when we're selecting the move to do, and how it operates off of the 1 to 100 scale. But obviously, I wouldn't want like the character to do like 100 damage if you roll, on this. So I've created what I call applied stats. And this is going to be like their attack stat is going to be the equipment plus the strength score plus, any potential debuffs, any potential buffs that they've added. All of that stuff just kind of gets funneled into this one score of applied stats. And then I can use all of the different variables. Like, let's say he has a weapon that does 5 points of damage, but he also has a strength score that gives him a base 3 to the attack. So now he's going to be doing like 8 points of damage. And instead of being like, hey, add the sword plus the strength score plus he took a strength potion and now he's doing freaking 20 points of damage. I don't have to add all of those individually in events. I can just do broop and just squish it all into one and just be like, hey, the applied number is this. And then just take that value. And then we can subtract and add from that based off of what's going on. So I guess we can talk about potential things for the future. I want to, I haven't even started on this. There's 0 events in travel, but I want to have an overworld similar to For the King. I haven't decided on if I want to do hex system yet, but I'm definitely leaning towards it because I love me a good hex crawl. And plus I just think that they're interesting and fun to navigate. But I want to do a procedural generation thing. I've been looking at a bunch of videos on procedural generation and I think they're cool. I want to add in a bunch of cool events, a bunch of neat enemies, and I have a whole design document of what could be a full game, which is crazy for me to even talk about right now. But I've been having a lot of ideas for this, and I have some art that I want to make for it, and I think it's the beginning of a really cool project for me. So idle mining game, get it out of here. I'm just joking. I'll probably come back to it at some point, but after I did the Game Jam game, which video on that coming soon. I wanted to take a break from that style and just kind of get into something else. And this has been a very fun project that I'm very excited to continue doing. So all of the devlogs that are going to be coming out of the channel, or at least the, the little more intimate, just head in a webcam and this style, will probably be focused on this. So if you have any ideas for things that would be cool for this, let me know them in the comments. If you're excited about these potential ideas, let me know. If there's anything you think I could be doing better, more efficiently, let me know that too. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Adios.